A doctor grabbed my arm in the hospital corridor and whispered urgently, "Call the police. Your wife has been lying to you for 6 years. She can walk perfectly fine." I stood there frozen, my mind refusing to process what I had just heard. 6 years. 6 years of my life dedicated to caring for Sarah, my wife who I believed was paralyzed from the waist down after a terrible car accident. 6 years of carrying her to bed, bathing her, dressing her, feeding her when she claimed her arms were too weak. 6 years of working 2 jobs to pay for her medical bills, her physical therapy sessions, her medications. 6 years of sacrificing my dreams, my career, my social life. And now, this doctor, Dr. Mitchell, was telling me it was all a lie. My name is James Carter, and I'm 34 years old. I live in Portland, Oregon, where the rain seems to match the constant gray cloud that has hung over my life since that accident, or what I thought was an accident. Before I tell you what happened next, let me take you back to where it all began, because understanding how I got here requires knowing who Sarah and I were before everything fell apart. Sarah and I met in college, both of us studying at Portland State University. She was studying graphic design, and I was pursuing a degree in civil engineering. We met at a coffee shop near campus called the Daily Grind, a place that smelled perpetually of espresso and had walls covered in local art. She was sitting alone, working on her laptop, her dark hair falling across her face as she concentrated on whatever design she was creating. I had noticed her before around campus, always thought she was beautiful, but never had the courage to approach her. That day, I finally worked up the nerve. I walked over with my coffee, my hands shaking slightly, and asked if I could sit at her table since the shop was crowded. She looked up, smiled, and said, "Sure." That smile changed my life. We talked for 3 hours that day, the conversation flowing so naturally that I forgot about my afternoon class. She was witty, intelligent, passionate about her art. She told me about her dreams of opening her own design studio someday, working with small businesses to create meaningful branding. I told her about my plans to design sustainable infrastructure, to make cities more livable and environmentally friendly. If you're enjoying this story and want to hear more content like this, please click that subscribe button below. We're working toward reaching 1,000 subscribers, and your support means everything to this channel. It just takes one click, and you'll be part of this growing community. We started dating shortly after that first meeting. The relationship moved fast, but it felt right. Sarah was unlike anyone I had ever met. She was spontaneous where I was cautious, creative where I was analytical. We balanced each other perfectly, or so I thought. Within a year, we moved in together to a small apartment in the Pearl District, a trendy neighborhood filled with art galleries and restaurants. The apartment was tiny, barely 600 square feet, but we loved it. We painted the walls ourselves, spent weekends hunting for furniture at thrift stores, turned that little space into our home. 2 years after we met, I proposed. I had planned this elaborate proposal at Pittock Mansion, this historic house that overlooks the entire city. I wanted it to be perfect, memorable. But as we stood there looking at the view of downtown Portland with Mount Hood in the distance, I couldn't wait. I pulled out the ring right there, got down on one knee, and asked her to marry me. She said yes before I even finished the question, tears streaming down her face. We were married 6 months later in a small ceremony at a vineyard in the Willamette Valley, surrounded by close friends and family. It was a beautiful September day, warm and sunny, rare for Oregon. Sarah looked stunning in her simple white dress, holding a bouquet of wildflowers. When she walked down the aisle toward me, I remember thinking I was the luckiest man alive. The first 3 years of our marriage were happy. We both worked hard at building our careers. Sarah landed a job at a respected design firm downtown, and I got hired by a civil engineering company that specialized in green building projects. We bought a small house in the Selwood neighborhood, a charming 2-bedroom craftsman with a front porch and a tiny backyard. We talked about having kids someday, maybe in a few years after we were more established in our careers. Life felt full of possibility. Then came the accident, or what I believed was the accident. It was a rainy November evening, typical for Portland. Sarah had texted me that she was working late, finishing up a project for an important client. She said she would be home around 9. I made dinner, waited for her, kept checking my phone. By 10, I started to worry. By 10:30, I called her multiple times, but the calls went straight to voicemail. At 11:15, I got the call I had been dreading. It was from Oregon Health and Science University Hospital. There had been an accident. Sarah's car had slid on the wet road and crashed into a guardrail on Highway 26. She was alive but seriously injured. I needed to come to the hospital immediately. I drove through the rain, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it over the windshield wipers. When I got to the hospital, they took me to her room in the ICU. She looked so small in that hospital bed, hooked up to machines, her face bruised and swollen. The doctor, a different doctor than the one I would meet 6 years later, told me she had sustained severe trauma to her spine. They had done emergency surgery, but the damage was extensive. She was paralyzed from the waist down. They couldn't say for certain whether she would ever walk again, but the prognosis wasn't good. He used phrases like significant nerve damage and long road to recovery and realistic expectations. I held Sarah's hand as she cried. She kept saying she was sorry, that she should have been more careful, that she didn't want to be a burden. I told her none of that mattered, that we would get through this together, that I would take care of her no matter what. I meant every word. When you love someone, you don't abandon them when things get hard. That's what I believed. That's what kept me going through everything that came next. The recovery was brutal. Sarah spent 2 months in the hospital, then 3 months in a rehabilitation facility. I visited every single day after work, spending hours by her side. The physical therapist worked with her constantly, trying to help her regain some mobility, some independence. She made minimal progress. She could use her arms, though she claimed they were weak and painful. She had feeling in her upper body, but nothing below her waist. The therapists taught her how to transfer herself from the bed to a wheelchair, but she struggled with it, often needing assistance. I learned how to help her with everything: bathing, dressing, using the bathroom, managing her medications. When she finally came home, I had already made modifications to our house. I installed ramps, widened doorways, converted our downstairs office into a bedroom so she wouldn't have to navigate stairs. I bought a specialized wheelchair, a hospital bed, all the equipment the doctors recommended. Our savings account was drained, but I didn't care. This was my wife. This was my responsibility. Your subscription really helps this channel grow. If you haven't already, please take a moment to click subscribe. We're on a journey to reach 1,000 subscribers, and every single one counts. Just hit that red button below. It only takes a second. I became Sarah's full-time caregiver while also working full-time. I would wake up at 5 in the morning, help her with her morning routine, make breakfast, get her settled in the living room with everything she might need within reach, then rush to work. I came home during my lunch break to check on her, make sure she had eaten, help her use the bathroom. After work, I would come home and spend the evening caring for her, making dinner, helping her bathe, getting her ready for bed. It was exhausting, but I told myself this was temporary, that eventually we would find a rhythm, that things would get easier. But things didn't get easier. Sarah's condition seemed to worsen rather than improve. She became increasingly dependent, claiming she was losing strength in her arms. Tasks she could do herself in the rehabilitation facility, she now needed my help with. She stopped attempting to transfer herself from the wheelchair to the bed, saying it was too painful, too difficult. I had to lift her, carry her, move her constantly. My back started to ache from the physical strain. I developed chronic pain in my shoulders and lower back, but I pushed through it. I had no choice. The medical bills piled up. Even with insurance, the costs were astronomical. Physical therapy, occupational therapy, medications, medical equipment, doctor's appointments. I took on a second job, working nights and weekends doing freelance CAD work for architectural firms. I was sleeping maybe 4 hours a night, running on coffee and determination. My boss at my primary job was understanding at first, but my performance started to slip. I was exhausted all the time, making mistakes, missing deadlines. I got passed over for a promotion I had been working toward for years. That promotion would have meant a significant salary increase, money we desperately needed, but I couldn't focus on work anymore. My entire life had become about taking care of Sarah. Our social life disappeared completely. Friends stopped inviting us to things because Sarah always said she didn't feel well enough to go out, that being around people exhausted her. The few times I suggested going somewhere, just the two of us, she would get upset, say I didn't understand how hard this was for her, how difficult it was to be seen in public in a wheelchair. I stopped pushing. I stopped seeing friends. I stopped doing anything that wasn't work or caregiving. I was completely isolated, completely alone. But I told myself this was what marriage meant. This was the vow I had made, in sickness and in health. Sarah's personality changed, too. She became demanding, critical, never satisfied with anything I did. If I made her favorite meal, she would complain it wasn't seasoned right. If I helped her bathe, I was either too rough or not thorough enough. If I was even 5 minutes late coming home from work, she would accuse me of not caring about her, of abandoning her. She would cry, say she wished she had died in the accident, that she was a burden, that maybe I should just leave her. And like a fool, I would comfort her, reassure her, promise I would never leave, that I loved her more than anything. The financial strain became unbearable. We were drowning in debt. Credit cards maxed out, medical bills sent to collections, the mortgage constantly behind. I sold my car and started taking the bus to work to save money. I canceled our cable, our streaming services, anything that wasn't essential. We ate the cheapest food I could find. I wore the same clothes until they fell apart. Every penny went toward Sarah's care or keeping the house. I applied for disability benefits on her behalf, but the process was slow and complicated, requiring endless documentation and appeals. If you're finding value in this story, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel. We're working hard to build a community here and reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Your subscription makes a huge difference. Just click that subscribe button and you'll get notified whenever we post new content. Years passed in this exhausting routine. Year 1 became year 2. Year 2 became year 3. I kept waiting for things to improve, for Sarah to make progress in her recovery, for her to become more independent, but if anything, she became more dependent. She started having panic attacks whenever I suggested she try to do things herself, said I was being cruel, that I didn't understand her limitations. The doctors we saw regularly seemed perplexed by her lack of progress, but attributed it to psychological trauma from the accident. One neurologist suggested she might benefit from therapy for depression and anxiety, that her mental state could be impeding her physical recovery. Sarah refused. She said therapy was for weak people, that she wasn't crazy, that she just needed time. By year 4, I was a shell of the person I used to be. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. I had aged dramatically, dark circles under my eyes, gray hair appearing at my temples even though I was only in my early 30s. I had gained weight from stress and lack of exercise. I had no energy, no joy, no hope. I went through the motions of living, but felt dead inside. The only thing that kept me going was the belief that this was my duty, that this was what love required. Our relationship, the romantic part of it, had died completely. We hadn't been intimate in years. Sarah said her body didn't work that way anymore, that the paralysis had taken that from her too. I accepted it, didn't push. Even though I missed the physical connection, the closeness. I missed feeling loved, feeling wanted, but I buried those feelings, told myself they were selfish, that Sarah's needs were more important than mine. Around year 5, something started to nag at me. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Little things that didn't add up. Sometimes I would come home and things in the house would be in different positions than where I had left them. A vase on a table across the room from where Sarah's wheelchair could reach. The thermostat adjusted to a different temperature even though it was on the wall, too high for her to reach from her chair. Dishes in the sink that I hadn't left there. I would ask Sarah about these things, and she always had an explanation. She said maybe I had moved things and forgotten, or maybe I was mistaken about where things had been. She would get upset if I pressed the issue, accuse me of trying to make her feel crazy, say I was looking for reasons to blame her for things. I started to doubt my own memory, my own perceptions. The stress and exhaustion were so severe that maybe I was losing track of things, making mistakes. Maybe I was going crazy, but the nagging feeling persisted, growing stronger. Then came the day that changed everything. It was early March, 6 years after the accident. I came home from work in the middle of the day, something I rarely did, because I had forgotten an important file I needed for a meeting. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Through the living room window, I saw Sarah standing up, walking across the room carrying a laundry basket. Not shuffling, not struggling, but walking normally, easily, like she had never been in that wheelchair at all. I sat in my car, stunned, my mind refusing to process what I had just seen. It couldn't be real. I must have been mistaken. Maybe it was someone else in our house, though that made no sense. I walked up to the front door, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get my key in the lock. I opened the door, and Sarah was back in her wheelchair, positioned in front of the TV, looking like she always did. She seemed surprised to see me. "James, what are you doing home?" she asked, her voice casual. "I forgot a file," I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. I was watching her face, looking for any sign of guilt, any indication of what I thought I had seen. Her expression was neutral, slightly concerned. "Are you okay? You look pale," she said. "I'm fine," I lied. I grabbed the file from my briefcase near the door and left, but my mind was racing. Had I really seen what I thought I saw? Or was the exhaustion finally catching up to me, making me hallucinate? Help us reach 1,000 subscribers by clicking that subscribe button right now. If this story is keeping you engaged, your subscription shows your support and helps this channel continue creating content. It's free and just takes one click. I couldn't concentrate at work for the rest of the day. I kept replaying what I had seen in my mind. The more I thought about it, the more certain I became that I hadn't imagined it. I had seen Sarah walking. But why would she lie? Why would she pretend to be paralyzed for 6 years? The questions tormented me. That evening, I did something I never thought I would do. After helping Sarah into bed and waiting until she fell asleep, I set up my laptop in the kitchen with the camera facing the living room. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I would check the recording tomorrow and see nothing, and that would prove I had imagined everything. But I had to know. I had to be sure. The next day, I left for work as usual. I was anxious all day, barely able to focus on anything. When I got home that evening, I helped Sarah with her usual routine. Then after she went to sleep, I checked the laptop. What I saw on that recording destroyed me. About an hour after I had left for work, Sarah transferred herself out of the wheelchair with ease, stood up, and walked around the house. Not walked like someone relearning how to use their legs, but walked normally, comfortably, like she had been doing it all along. She did laundry, cleaned the kitchen, exercised to a workout video on the TV, made herself lunch, talked on the phone while pacing around the room. She was laughing, energetic, completely mobile. Then, about 30 minutes before I usually came home, she got back in the wheelchair and positioned herself where I would expect to find her. I watched this recording 3 times, each viewing more devastating than the last. 6 years. 6 years of lies. 6 years of my life stolen. I felt like I was going to be sick. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to storm into the bedroom and confront her. But something made me pause. I needed to understand the full scope of this deception. I needed evidence. I needed to be smart about this. For the next week, I continued the recordings. Every day, the same pattern. Sarah would wait until I left, then get up and go about her day completely mobile. She would clean, cook, exercise, video chat with people I didn't recognize. One day I saw her on the recording dancing in the living room to music playing from her phone. Dancing, while I was working 2 jobs to pay for her care, destroying my body and my mental health, she was dancing in our living room. The betrayal was so deep, so complete, that I couldn't process it. I went through the motions of caring for her each day, but inside I was numb. I didn't know who this person was, this woman I had been married to for 9 years, this woman I had sacrificed everything for. How could someone do this? How could someone be this cruel? I started looking back through our finances, trying to understand if there was a financial motive. What I found made everything worse. Sarah had been receiving disability payments for the last 4 years, payments I didn't know about because she had set up a separate bank account. Thousands of dollars per month, money she had been keeping for herself while I worked myself into the ground to support us. I found statements showing expensive purchases, designer clothes, jewelry, electronics, all delivered to a P.O. box I didn't know she had. I felt like I was living with a stranger, a monster wearing my wife's face. But I still didn't confront her. I contacted a lawyer, explained the situation, showed him the recordings. He advised me to gather as much evidence as possible, to document everything. He explained that what Sarah was doing was fraud on multiple levels, insurance fraud, disability fraud, and potentially financial abuse. He suggested I also speak with law enforcement and get their guidance on how to proceed. I was terrified and angry and heartbroken all at once. I had lost 6 years of my life to this lie. 6 years I could never get back. I thought about all the sacrifices I had made, all the dreams I had given up, all the pain I had endured, and it had all been for nothing. It had all been for a lie. Please subscribe to help us grow this channel. We're so close to reaching 1,000 subscribers, and your support means the world. If you're invested in this story and want to hear more like it, just click that subscribe button. It's quick, it's free, and it really helps. I decided I needed medical proof, something irrefutable. I scheduled an appointment with a new doctor, told Sarah we needed to get a second opinion on her condition, that maybe there were new treatments available. She was hesitant at first, but I insisted, told her I had found a specialist who had experience with spinal cord injuries. Reluctantly, she agreed. The appointment was at Oregon Health and Science University Hospital with Dr. Mitchell, a neurologist who specialized in spinal cord injuries. I had spoken with him beforehand, privately, explained the situation and showed him some of the recordings. He was shocked and agreed to examine Sarah thoroughly. The day of the appointment, I helped Sarah into the car, loaded her wheelchair, went through all the usual motions. Sarah seemed nervous, kept asking why we needed to do this, saying she didn't want to get her hopes up about new treatments. I reassured her, told her it was just a consultation, nothing to worry about. Dr. Mitchell's examination was thorough. He tested her reflexes, her sensation, her muscle strength. He ordered an MRI, blood work, nerve conduction studies. Sarah played her part well, wincing in pain when he touched her legs, claiming she had no feeling below the waist, acting weak when he tested her arm strength. I watched her performance with disgust, amazed at how convincing she was, how naturally the lies came to her. After all the tests were complete, Dr. Mitchell asked to speak with me privately. Sarah protested, said she wanted to hear whatever he had to say, but he insisted, told her it was routine to speak with caregivers separately. I wheeled her back to the waiting room, then followed him to his office. That's when he grabbed my arm and told me to call the police. He said the MRI showed no significant spinal cord damage, nothing that would cause paralysis. Her reflexes were normal. Her nerve conduction studies were normal. Her muscle tone was normal. There was old scar tissue consistent with an injury, but nothing that would prevent her from walking. She was faking everything. "I need you to understand this clearly," Dr. Mitchell said, his face serious. "Your wife has no medical reason to be in that wheelchair. Her spine has healed. The injury she sustained 6 years ago was serious, but with the surgery and therapy she received, she should have regained full mobility. The fact that she hasn't is not because she can't, it's because she's chosen not to. This is a serious matter, not just medically but legally. She's been defrauding insurance companies, disability services, and frankly, she's been abusing you. I need you to document everything," he continued. "I'm going to write a detailed report of my findings. But you need to involve law enforcement. What she's doing is criminal. Insurance fraud, disability fraud, these are serious felonies. Beyond that, she's stolen 6 years of your life through deception. That's a form of abuse, even if it's not physical." I sat there in his office, and even though I had known the truth, even though I had the recordings, hearing it confirmed by a medical professional made it real in a way it hadn't been before. I felt like I was falling, like the ground had disappeared beneath me. Everything I had believed about my life, my marriage, my purpose for the last 6 years was a lie. "What do I do now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "First, call the police," he said. "Show them the recordings. Show them my report. Second, protect yourself legally. Get a lawyer if you haven't already. Third, understand that you're a victim here. What she did to you is not your fault. You were acting out of love and compassion, and she manipulated that. That's on her, not you." I left his office and returned to the waiting room where Sarah sat in her wheelchair, playing on her phone. She looked up and smiled at me. That same sweet smile that had made me fall in love with her all those years ago at the daily grind. But now it looked like a mask, a disguise hiding the monster underneath. "What did he say?" she asked. "He wants to run a few more tests," I lied. "We need to come back next week." We drove home in silence. My mind was racing with what I needed to do. That evening, after helping Sarah into bed, I sat at the kitchen table and called the police. An officer came to the house and I showed him everything: the recordings, the financial documents, Dr. Mitchell's report. He was as shocked as I had been. "This is one of the most elaborate fraud cases I've seen," the officer said. "We're going to need to investigate this thoroughly. We'll need to coordinate with the insurance companies, disability services, possibly the FBI since this crosses state lines and involves federal disability programs. This is going to take some time, but we will build a case. In the meantime, I need you to continue documenting everything. Don't confront her yet. We need to gather all the evidence before we make any moves. If you're still watching, please take a second to subscribe. We're building something special here, and we need 1,000 subscribers to continue growing. Your click makes a real difference. Hit that subscribe button now and join our community. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. I had to continue the charade, continue caring for Sarah, continue pretending I didn't know the truth, all while working with the police to build their case. Every time I lifted her, every time I helped her bathe, every time I listened to her complain about how hard her life was, I wanted to scream the truth at her. But I held it in. I played my part as well as she had played hers. The investigation revealed even more than I had known. Sarah had been planning this for longer than 6 years. The police found evidence that she had researched paralysis extensively before the accident, had looked up symptoms, disability requirements, how to fake medical conditions. They found online forums where she had discussed with other fraudsters how to maintain a long-term deception. The car accident had been real and the initial injury had been real, but she had seen an opportunity and taken it. They also discovered she had been having an affair. One of the people she video chatted with regularly was a man named Derek, someone she had met online. She had told him she was in an abusive marriage, that she was trapped, that she was planning to leave me as soon as she had saved enough money from her disability payments. She was planning to take everything: the house, the savings. whatever assets remained. She was going to leave me with nothing but debt and the memory of 6 years of hell. That's when I finally understood. This wasn't just about money, though money was part of it. This was about control, about power. Sarah enjoyed manipulating me, enjoyed watching me sacrifice everything for her. She got off on the power dynamic, on having complete control over my life. I had been her puppet, dancing on strings she had so carefully crafted. 2 months after that appointment with Dr. Mitchell, the police were ready to make their arrest. They came to the house early in the morning. I was instructed to act normal, to start helping Sarah with her morning routine as usual. When I went into the bedroom, she was already awake, sitting up in bed. "Good morning," I said, my voice neutral. "Morning," she replied, stretching, her performance of weakness. "There are some people here who need to talk to you," I said. "Who?" she asked, suddenly alert, suspicious. "The police." Her face changed. For the first time in 6 years, I saw real fear in her eyes. She knew it was over. "What are you talking about?" she tried to bluff. "Why would the police be here?" "I think you know why," I said quietly. 2 officers entered the bedroom. "Sarah Carlson," they began, "you're under arrest for insurance fraud, disability fraud, and theft. You have the right to remain silent." "What?" "No! This is insane, James. What is happening?" Sarah shouted, still trying to maintain her act. "I can't walk. How can they arrest me? I can't even stand up." One of the officers stepped forward. "Ma'am, we have video evidence of you walking around this house. We have medical reports confirming you have no physical impairment preventing mobility. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." The look Sarah gave me in that moment was pure hatred. The mask finally dropped completely, and I saw the real person underneath. The person who had spent 6 years destroying my life for her own gain. "You bastard," she hissed. "You were supposed to take care of me. You promised." "I did take care of you," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "I gave you 6 years of my life. I destroyed my health, my career, my finances, everything, for a lie. I kept promises you never deserved. They took her away that morning. I stood in the doorway of our house, watching them put her in the police car, still not quite believing it was real. Neighbors had come out onto their lawns, watching the scene unfold. I would have to explain this to them eventually, explain to everyone how I had been living a lie for 6 years. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers, and we need your help to get there. If this story moved you, if it made you think or feel something, please subscribe to the channel. Click that button right now and be part of reaching this goal together. The legal process that followed was exhausting but necessary. Sarah was charged with multiple counts of fraud, each carrying significant prison time. She tried to claim mental illness, tried to say she had convinced herself she was actually paralyzed. But the evidence was overwhelming. The recordings, the online forum posts, the affair, her searches about how to fake disabilities, it all painted a clear picture of intentional, calculated fraud. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I had to testify, had to relive every moment of those 6 years in front of a courtroom full of strangers. I had to describe in detail what my life had been like, the sacrifices I had made, the toll it had taken on my health and finances. I had to watch as they played the recordings of Sarah walking around the house while I was at work, dancing, exercising, living a normal life while I believed she was suffering. The hardest part was watching her on the stand, listening to her try to justify what she had done. She claimed I had been controlling, that she felt trapped in the marriage, that the only way she could maintain any independence was to fake her condition. She tried to paint herself as the victim, as someone who had been pushed to desperate measures. But the evidence contradicted every claim she made. The jury saw through her lies just as I had finally seen through them. She was found guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 8 years in federal prison, ordered her to pay restitution to the insurance companies, to disability services, and to me personally for the financial losses I had incurred. The amount was staggering, over $400,000, money I would likely never see since she had spent most of what she had stolen. But the verdict itself, the acknowledgement that what she had done was wrong, that I had been a victim, that mattered more than any money. After the trial, I filed for divorce. It was uncontested. Sarah signed the papers from prison. Our marriage was officially dissolved 9 months after her arrest. 9 years of marriage ended with a signature on a legal document. Just like that, it was over. The aftermath has been complicated. I'm in therapy now, trying to process what happened, trying to understand how I missed the signs, trying to forgive myself for being so blind. My therapist tells me that I was a victim of an elaborate form of abuse, that Sarah was a master manipulator, that I shouldn't blame myself. But it's hard not to feel stupid, not to wonder how I could have been so fooled for so long. Financially, I'm slowly recovering. I had to declare bankruptcy to deal with the debt Sarah's fraud had created. I lost the house, lost almost everything we had built together. But I got a new job at a different firm, one that's been understanding about what I went through. I'm rebuilding my career, rediscovering my passion for engineering. It's slow, but it's progress. Socially, I'm reconnecting with old friends, people I had pushed away during those 6 years. They've been surprisingly supportive, understanding. Some have shared their own stories of being deceived by partners, of staying in bad relationships too long. I'm learning that I'm not alone in this, that many people have experienced betrayal, even if not quite like mine. Dating feels impossible right now. How do I trust anyone again? How do I open myself up to another person when the person I trusted most in the world spent 6 years lying to me every single day? My therapist says it will take time, that I need to heal before I can be in a healthy relationship. I'm not sure I'll ever be ready. The strangest part is the public attention. My story made the news, local at first, then national. People were fascinated by the audacity of Sarah's fraud, by the length of the deception. I've received hundreds of messages from strangers, some supportive, some critical, some from people sharing their own stories of deception and betrayal. I've become an unintentional spokesperson for victims of this particular type of fraud, even though I never wanted that role. Some people have asked me if I hate Sarah. The truth is more complicated than that. I hate what she did. I hate the lies, the manipulation, the years she stole from me. But I also feel sorry for her in a way. What kind of person does something like this? What kind of void inside someone drives them to such an elaborate deception? She destroyed both our lives with her choices. Yes, I suffered more, but she also threw away whatever genuine connection we had, whatever good parts of our relationship existed before the accident. She chose fraud and manipulation over love and honesty, and now she's sitting in a prison cell, her life ruined, her reputation destroyed. Before we wrap up, I want to ask one more time. If you found this story compelling, please subscribe to the channel. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers, and every single subscription helps us create more content like this. Just click that subscribe button below. Thank you for being here. Looking back now, I can see there were signs I missed or chose to ignore. The inconsistencies in her stories. The way she would sometimes forget which symptoms she was supposed to be experiencing. The odd moments when her reactions didn't quite match someone who was truly paralyzed. But I was so deep in the role of devoted caregiver, so committed to the narrative of standing by my wife through impossible circumstances, that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. Love made me blind. Or maybe it wasn't love by the end. Maybe it was just stubbornness, an unwillingness to admit that I had been wrong about her, about us, about everything. I think about the person I was before all this. That young man in the coffee shop who was nervous to talk to a pretty girl. I was optimistic then, believed in the goodness of people, believed that love could conquer anything. I'm not that person anymore. I'm harder now, more cynical, more guarded. I don't know if that's better or worse, But it's the reality of what 6 years of deception does to a person. There are still moments when I wake up and forget for a second, when my brain is still running on the old routine, and I think I need to go help Sarah get out of bed. Then reality crashes back in, and I remember that she was never in that bed helplessly waiting for my assistance. She was playing a role, and I was her audience of one, giving the performance of her life a standing ovation every single day. I've learned things about myself through this ordeal. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought, that I survived something that could have completely broken me. I learned that I have a capacity for forgiveness, even when forgiveness seems impossible, because holding on to anger and hatred would only hurt me more in the end. I learned that love, real love, shouldn't require you to destroy yourself, that sacrifice is noble but self-destruction is not, that there's a difference between supporting someone through hardship and enabling someone's manipulation. Most importantly, I learned that trust, once shattered so completely, doesn't just grow back. It has to be rebuilt carefully, piece by piece, and maybe it never looks quite the same as it did before. The naive trust I had before, that automatic belief in people's goodness, that's gone forever. In its place is something more cautious, more measured. I verify now. I question. I look for patterns. Some might call that cynicism, but I call it survival. The legal restitution ordered by the court is being paid in tiny increments from Sarah's prison wages, about $20 a month. At that rate, it would take hundreds of years to repay what she owes. The insurance companies and disability services are pursuing their own claims, standing in line with me for money that doesn't exist. Her parents, who initially defended her during the trial, eventually stopped visiting her in prison after the full scope of her deception became clear. Even they couldn't reconcile the daughter they thought they knew with the person who could do what Sarah did. I found out through mutual acquaintances that Derek, the man she was having the affair with, disappeared the moment she was arrested. He had apparently been married himself, had been juggling multiple online relationships with different women, each of whom he had told different lies. Sarah had been planning her escape to a fantasy that was itself another lie. There's something almost poetic about that, in a dark way. She had built her freedom plan on another deception, another house of cards waiting to collapse. The neighborhood we lived in never quite looked at me the same way after everything came out. Some people were supportive, bringing casseroles and offering help, treating me like the victim I was. But others looked at me with suspicion, like maybe I had known all along, like maybe I was somehow complicit. A few people even suggested that I must have done something to drive Sarah to such extreme measures, that no one fakes paralysis for 6 years without a reason. Those comments hurt almost as much as the betrayal itself, this implication that I was somehow to blame for my own victimization. I ended up moving away from Portland about a year after the trial. Too many memories, too many people who knew the story, too much weight in every street corner and coffee shop. I relocated to Seattle, started fresh in a city where no one knew me, where I could just be James, a civil engineer who works on sustainable infrastructure projects, not James, the guy whose wife faked being paralyzed for 6 years. The anonymity was healing in its own way. In Seattle, I found a small apartment in the Capitol Hill neighborhood. Nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom place with big windows that let in the gray Pacific Northwest light. I decorated it simply, deliberately choosing not to bring much from my old life. Most of the furniture Sarah and I had owned was sold to help pay off debts anyway. Starting over with nothing felt appropriate somehow, like I was rebuilding myself from the foundation up, just like the buildings I design. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into projects, volunteering for the challenging assignments, the ones that required long hours and intense focus. My colleagues at the new firm appreciated my dedication, not knowing it came from a place of wanting to exhaust myself so completely that I couldn't think about anything else. I worked on a green housing development, designing sustainable water systems and energy-efficient infrastructure. The project won awards, got featured in architecture magazines. My career, at least, was recovering faster than my personal life. One of the unexpected consequences of everything that happened is that I became hyper-aware of other people's suffering, real or performed. I find myself watching people in wheelchairs, looking for signs, questioning whether they're genuine. I hate that Sarah did this to me, gave me this suspicion, this inability to take people's disabilities at face value. I know statistically that the vast majority of people with disabilities are genuine, that cases like Sarah's are rare, but the paranoia is hard to shake. I have to actively fight against it, remind myself not to project my experience onto others. My physical health improved once the caregiving burden was lifted. The chronic back pain gradually decreased. I started exercising again, joined a gym, began eating better. I lost the stress weight I had gained. When I look in the mirror now, I see someone who looks closer to his actual age, rather than someone who aged a decade in 6 years. But there are still traces of what I went through. Lines around my eyes that weren't there before. Gray hairs that serve as permanent reminders. The therapy sessions continue twice a week. My therapist, Dr. Reeves, specializes in trauma from interpersonal betrayal. She's helped me understand that what I experienced was a form of psychological abuse, that Sarah's deception created a false reality I was forced to live in, similar to what people describe as gaslighting, but on a massive, sustained scale. We've worked through my feelings of guilt, my tendency to blame myself for not seeing the truth sooner. She's helped me understand that master manipulators are skilled precisely because they know how to exploit empathy and love. One exercise Dr. Reeves had me do was particularly powerful. She asked me to write a letter to my younger self, to the James who had just witnessed that car accident, who was sitting in that hospital room holding Sarah's hand and promising to stand by her. In that letter, I told him that what he was about to do came from a place of love, that his loyalty and dedication were admirable qualities, not weaknesses. I told him that he couldn't have known what was coming, that he made the best decisions he could with the information he had. I told him that he would survive this even though there would be times when survival seemed impossible. Writing that letter made me cry harder than I had cried through the entire ordeal, but it also helped me start forgiving myself. I've had to accept that there are questions I'll never have answers to. I'll never fully understand why Sarah did what she did. Even her testimony at trial, her explanations and justifications felt incomplete, like she herself didn't fully understand her own motivations. Was it planned from the beginning, or did she make a split-second decision after the accident to exaggerate her injuries and then found herself unable to back out? Was it purely about money, or was there something deeper, some psychological need for attention and control? I've stopped trying to figure it out. Some questions don't have satisfying answers, and searching for them only keeps you trapped in the past. About 18 months after everything fell apart, I went on my first date. Her name was Rachel, a landscape architect I met through work on a collaborative project. She was kind, intelligent, passionate about creating green spaces in urban environments. We went to dinner at a small Italian restaurant in the Fremont neighborhood, and I was nervous in a way I hadn't been since that first conversation with Sarah at the Daily Grind all those years ago. I knew I had to tell Rachel about my past at some point. The story had been in the news, was easily findable with a simple internet search of my name. I decided to be upfront about it on that first date, explaining briefly what had happened. I watched her face carefully as I told the story, looking for signs of judgment or discomfort. Instead, she reached across the table and touched my hand gently. "That must have been incredibly difficult," she said. "Thank you for trusting me enough to share it. We dated for several months. Rachel was patient with my trust issues, understanding when I needed space, never pushing me faster than I was ready to go. But ultimately, the relationship didn't work out. It wasn't about my past or my trauma, at least not directly. We simply wanted different things from life, She wanted to stay in Seattle permanently, put down roots, start thinking about marriage and children. I wasn't ready for any of that. Might never be ready for it again. We ended things amicably, remained friends and professional colleagues. That relationship taught me that I could open up to someone again, even if I wasn't ready for something serious. The second year after the trial brought unexpected developments. A documentary filmmaker reached out, wanting to tell my story as part of a series on fraud and deception. I was hesitant at first, didn't want to relive everything again for cameras, didn't want my pain turned into entertainment. But the filmmaker convinced me that sharing the story could help other people who might be in similar situations, might help people recognize the signs of manipulation and deception before years of their lives were stolen. We spent weeks filming interviews, going through the recordings, visiting the old house where everything had happened. The filmmaker interviewed Dr. Mitchell, my lawyer, even some of the police officers who had worked the case. They wanted to interview Sarah too, but she refused from prison. The documentary aired on a major streaming platform and got significant attention. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of messages from people who had experienced various forms of betrayal and manipulation, people who felt seen and validated by my story. One message in particular stood out. It was from a man named Robert who lived in Ohio. He explained that his girlfriend of 4 years had been faking a chronic illness, claiming she was too sick to work, requiring constant care and financial support. After seeing my story, he started noticing inconsistencies, set up cameras like I had, and discovered she was perfectly healthy, spending her days shopping and meeting up with friends while he worked multiple jobs to support her. He thanked me for giving him the courage to investigate, to trust his instincts, to demand the truth. His message made the difficult decision to participate in the documentary feel worthwhile. The documentary also brought criticism. Some disability advocates worried that my story would increase skepticism toward people with genuine disabilities, that it would make life harder for people who truly needed assistance and accommodation. They weren't wrong to be concerned. I received messages from people with invisible disabilities who described being questioned or doubted after my story went public, people being asked if they were pulling a Sarah when they requested disability accommodations. That weighed heavily on me. I never wanted my experience to cause harm to others who were legitimately suffering. I started doing interviews where I explicitly addressed this concern, emphasizing that Sarah's case was extremely rare, that the vast majority of people with disabilities are genuine, that we should continue to support and believe people rather than treating everyone with suspicion. I partnered with disability rights organizations to create educational materials about the difference between rare cases of fraud and the reality that most people face. It became a strange secondary mission, trying to prevent my story from being weaponized against vulnerable people. Through all of this, I've maintained a strict boundary. I do not profit from Sarah's crime. Every dollar I make from the documentary, from interviews, from speaking engagements, goes directly to organizations that support caregivers and people with disabilities. It's my way of ensuring that something good comes from something terrible, that the pain I experienced can be transformed into help for others. 3 years after Sarah's arrest, I received a letter from her. It was forwarded through my lawyer, who asked if I wanted to read it or have it destroyed unopened. I sat with that envelope for a week, staring at it, feeling its weight both literal and metaphorical. Part of me wanted to burn it without reading, to deny her any more of my emotional energy. But another part needed to know what she had to say after all this time. The letter was surprisingly short. Just 2 pages written in her familiar handwriting. She apologized, though the apology felt hollow, full of justifications and explanations that didn't really explain anything. She said she had been in a dark place mentally, that she had convinced herself the deception was necessary, that she never meant to hurt me so deeply. She claimed to be in therapy in prison, working on understanding why she did what she did. She said she hoped someday I could forgive her, not for her sake, but for mine, so I could move on. I read that letter 3 times, then put it in a drawer. I didn't respond. What was there to say? Forgiveness isn't something you give because someone asks for it. It's something you do for yourself in your own time, on your own terms. Maybe someday I'll forgive Sarah, but that day hasn't come yet, and it might never come. And that's okay. I've learned that healing doesn't require forgiveness, that moving forward doesn't mean letting go of anger or hurt. It just means not letting those feelings define you. One unexpected positive outcome has been the relationships I've built with other survivors of elaborate deceptions. There's a whole community of people who have experienced similar betrayals, different details, but the same core wound of discovering that someone they trusted completely was lying to them about fundamental aspects of reality. We connect online, share our stories, offer support and understanding that people who haven't experienced this kind of betrayal simply cannot provide. These connections have been lifelines during the darkest moments of recovery. I met Michael, whose business partner of 15 years had been embezzling funds while claiming the business was struggling, forcing Michael to take on debt to keep things afloat. I met Elena, whose sister faked cancer for 3 years, accepting money and support from family while she was perfectly healthy. I met David, whose best friend had created an elaborate fiction about his life, inventing a family, a career, even a terminal illness, none of which were real. Each story is unique, but we all share that same feeling of having lived in a constructed reality, of having had our trust weaponized against us. These connections have taught me that I'm not alone, that this kind of deep betrayal is more common than I thought, and that recovery is possible even when it seems impossible. Seeing Michael rebuild his business, Elena set boundaries with her toxic family member. David learned to trust again. These victories give me hope for my own continued healing. Now, 4 years after everything fell apart, I'm in a different place. I wouldn't say I'm healed, exactly. I don't know if you ever fully heal from something like this, but I'm functional. I'm building a life that feels like mine, not like something happening to me. I have good days and bad days. Some mornings I wake up angry, furious at the time that was stolen, the life I could have had. Other days I wake up grateful, thankful that I discovered the truth when I did, that I got out while I still had time to rebuild. I've started dating again, more seriously this time. Her name is Maya, and she's a social worker who specializes in helping domestic violence survivors. She understands trauma in a way that feels safe, doesn't push me to be further along in my healing than I am, accepts me exactly where I'm at. We've been together for 6 months, taking things slowly, building trust incrementally. I've told her everything about Sarah, shown her the documentary, been completely transparent about my struggles with trust and intimacy. She's been patient and kind, and for the first time since everything happened, I can imagine a future with someone that doesn't terrify me. My relationship with my family has also evolved. My parents and sister were supportive throughout the ordeal, but they didn't fully understand the depth of the betrayal until years later. My mother especially struggled with it, kept saying things like, "At least you found out," or "Everything happens for a reason," well-meaning platitudes that minimized what I had been through. It took several difficult conversations for them to understand that this wasn't something I could just get over, that the trauma was profound and would take years to process. Now they're better at simply listening, at being present without trying to fix or minimize. I've also reconnected with old friends from college, people I lost touch with during those 6 years of isolation. One friend, Marcus, told me that he had suspected something was wrong, that Sarah had seemed off during the few times he met her after the accident, but he didn't know how to bring it up without seeming insensitive. We talked about how difficult it is to question someone's disability, how the social contract of politeness and empathy prevents us from voicing suspicions even when our instincts are screaming that something isn't right. It's a difficult balance, believing and supporting people who are suffering while also staying alert to potential deception. The financial recovery has been slow but steady. The bankruptcy is behind me now, and while my credit took a massive hit, it's gradually improving. I'm saving money again, building an emergency fund, thinking about eventually buying another house. The debt from Sarah's fraud is legally discharged, which means I'm not obligated to pay it. But the moral weight of it still sits with me. Those medical providers who treated Sarah, the insurance companies that paid out claims, they were victims too. And knowing that my signature was on some of those fraudulent documents, even though I was deceived, still bothers me. I've thought about writing a book about my experience, something more detailed and thoughtful than the documentary could be. My therapist thinks it could be therapeutic, a way to take full ownership of the narrative, to share not just what happened, but what I've learned about betrayal, trust, love, and recovery. I've started writing, just fragments and memories for now, not sure yet what shape it will take or if I'll ever actually publish it. But the process of writing feels important, feels like reclaiming my story from Sarah's lies. One thing I've learned through all of this is that healing isn't linear. I'll have months where I feel strong, where I barely think about what happened, where I feel like I've moved on. Then something will trigger me, a news story about fraud, seeing someone in a wheelchair, even just a particular song that was playing during that period of my life, and suddenly I'm back there, feeling all the anger and hurt and betrayal as intensely as I did the day I learned the truth. Dr. Reeves says this is normal, that trauma doesn't disappear, it just becomes something you learn to carry. I've also had to confront my own role in the deception, not in causing it, but in enabling it. There were moments when I could have questioned more, could have insisted on second opinions earlier, could have trusted my instincts when things didn't add up. I've had to forgive myself for those choices, understand that I was operating from a place of love and trust, that those aren't character flaws even if they made me vulnerable to manipulation. It's a strange thing, having to forgive yourself for being too loving, too trusting, too dedicated. The legal system's handling of Sarah's case has been both satisfying and frustrating. 8 years in prison seems like justice, but it also doesn't seem like enough for 6 years of stolen life. The financial restitution is a joke, pennies on the dollar that will never come close to repaying what was taken. But beyond the tangible losses, how do you quantify the psychological damage? The lost opportunities, the relationships that suffered, the parts of myself I can never get back? You can't put a price on that, can't sentence someone to an equivalent punishment. Justice, I've learned, is imperfect at best. Sarah will be eligible for parole in about 3 more years if she demonstrates good behavior. I've already started preparing myself for that possibility, for the reality that she could be out of prison while I'm still processing the trauma of what she did. My lawyer has helped me file for a restraining order that will go into effect upon her release, prohibiting her from contacting me or coming within a certain distance. I don't think she would try to reach out, but I'm not taking any chances. I've learned the hard way that I can't predict what Sarah is capable of. Sometimes people ask me if I regret marrying Sarah, if I wish I could go back and never have met her that day at the daily grind. It's a complicated question. If I could erase those 9 years, I would also erase the person I became, the lessons I learned, the strength I discovered I had. I would be a different person, maybe a happier person, but not necessarily a better one. So, no, I don't wish I could change the past. I just wish the lesson hadn't cost quite so much. Looking toward the future, I'm cautiously optimistic. I have my career back on track. I'm in a healthy relationship with Maya. I have supportive friends and family. I'm financially recovering. I've started thinking about things I gave up during those 6 years, hobbies and interests that fell away. I joined a recreational soccer league, something I loved in college but abandoned completely when I became Sarah's caregiver. I've started traveling again, took a trip to Iceland last year, am planning to visit Japan next spring. I'm reclaiming the life that was taken from me, building something new from the ruins of what was destroyed. But I also carry the weight of what happened. It's changed me fundamentally. I'm more skeptical now, more cautious, slower to trust. I ask more questions, verify more claims, look for inconsistencies. Some people might see that as cynicism, but I see it as wisdom earned through painful experience. I've learned that evil doesn't always look like monsters in the dark. Sometimes it looks like someone you love, someone you trust completely, someone who smiles at you while destroying your life. The most important lesson I've learned is about self-worth. For 6 years, I measured my value by how well I cared for Sarah, how much I could sacrifice, how much pain I could endure. I had tied my identity so completely to being her caregiver that I lost sight of who I was outside of that role. Recovery has meant rediscovering my own value independent of what I can do for others, understanding that self-sacrifice isn't the highest form of love, that taking care of myself isn't selfish, that I matter too. I think about the younger version of me, the idealistic engineer who believed love could conquer anything, who thought devotion and loyalty were always virtuous. I want to tell him that he's not wrong exactly, but that he's incomplete in his understanding. Love is important, devotion matters, loyalty has value. But they have to be reciprocated. They have to be built on truth. One-sided sacrifice isn't noble, it's self-destruction. And you can't love someone enough to make them be honest. You can't care for someone so well that they become worthy of that care. People make their own choices, and sometimes those choices are terrible. And that's not your failure. If my story serves any purpose beyond my own healing, I hope it helps someone else recognize the signs of manipulation before years of their life are stolen. I hope it encourages people to trust their instincts, to ask questions when things don't add up, to prioritize their own well-being, even when it feels selfish. I hope it reminds people that being a good partner doesn't mean accepting everything without question, that healthy relationships are built on mutual respect and honesty, not on one person's endless sacrifice. And maybe, somewhere down the line, my story will reach someone who is considering doing what Sarah did, someone who is thinking about manipulating a loved one for personal gain. Maybe hearing about the devastation it causes, the lives it destroys on both sides, will make them reconsider. Maybe they'll choose honesty instead of deception. Maybe my pain can prevent someone else's. 4 years out, I'm still standing, scarred, changed, but standing. I survived something that could have destroyed me completely, and not only survived, but started to rebuild. That's not nothing. Some days it feels like everything. I don't know what the next chapter of my life looks like, but for the first time since that doctor grabbed my arm in the hospital corridor, I feel like I have agency in writing it. I'm not just reacting to Sarah's lies anymore. I'm creating something new, something true, something mine. The wheelchair Sarah used sits in a storage unit somewhere, seized as evidence during the investigation. I don't know what happened to it after the trial, if it was returned to the medical supply company or destroyed or sold. I don't care. It's a symbol of 6 years of lies, and I never want to see it again. What I do think about sometimes is all the people who actually need wheelchairs, who face genuine obstacles and challenges, whose experiences Sarah mocked and exploited with her deception. Her fraud didn't just hurt me. It hurt them too, added to the skepticism and doubt that people with disabilities already face. That's why I continue to speak out, to share my story while emphasizing its rarity, to support disability rights organizations even as I process my own trauma. It's my way of trying to prevent Sarah's actions from causing collateral damage to innocent people who are already struggling. It's the least I can do. As I write this final reflection, sitting in my Seattle apartment with rain pattering against the windows, exactly what you'd expect from the Pacific Northwest, I realize that I've spent so much time talking about Sarah, about what she did to me, that I've lost sight of something important. This is my story now, not hers. She may have written the plot for 6 years of my life, but I'm the one writing what comes next, and what comes next is mine to decide. I choose healing over hatred. I choose building over dwelling. I choose hope over bitterness. Not because those things are easy, they're not. But because the alternative is letting Sarah win even now, even from her prison cell, even after everything has come to light. She took 6 years from me. I won't let her take any more. So I move forward one day at a time, carrying the weight of what happened, but not letting it crush me. I work, I love, I laugh, I live. I honor the person I was before all of this by not letting it define the person I'm becoming. I survive, and in surviving, I reclaim what was stolen. My life, my identity, my future. That doctor who told me to call the police, Dr. Mitchell, did me the greatest kindness anyone could have done. He gave me the truth. And the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than the most comfortable lie. Because you can't heal from something you don't acknowledge. You can't recover from something you don't understand. You can't move forward from something you won't confront. I confronted the truth, as terrible as it was. I faced it, processed it, and now I'm moving beyond it. And if you're reading this, if you're in a situation where something doesn't feel right, where your instincts are telling you that you're being lied to or manipulated, I hope you find the courage to seek the truth too. Whatever it is, knowing is better than living in a lie. Always. This is my story. The story of how I lost 6 years of my life to a lie, and how I'm spending however many years I have left living in truth. It's not the story I would have chosen, but it's the one I got. And I'm determined to make something meaningful from it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. And if this story helped you in any way, made you think about your own life differently, or gave you courage to face a difficult truth, then every moment of pain was worth it.